Hi, I'm Kathy Liddle, Assistant Professor Teaching Stream in the Department of Sociology at the University of Toronto, Scarborough.
Hello, my name is Ujjwal Mantha, and I'm currently in my last year at the University of Toronto, Scarborough. I'm doing a double major in studio and sociology, and I'm here today to talk to you about a project that I've been working on for the better part of the last 3 years.
The story we're going to tell today is about collaboration, innovation, and reflection. It began in the fall of 2017 when Ujjwal showed up in my Intro to Sociology course as a first-year student. His contributions in class showed him to be thoughtful, creative, and quirky, one of my favorite combinations in a human being. One day as I passed him during break, I noticed elaborate drawings that he'd made in the margins of his notebook. And that year, during his many visits to my office hours, our conversations would often turn to art. I had the opportunity to hire him for a couple of small projects that year. And as I saw his skill at crystallizing concepts into visual representations, I started imagining what it would be like to create a visual dictionary of sociology. He was intrigued and enthusiastic about the idea, so we applied for and received a grant from the Centre for Teaching and Learning at the University of Toronto, Scarborough.
Could you explain, using just images, how certain social concepts work to an entire classroom of students? This was one of many interesting questions that Professor Kathy and I discussed during our office hours back in first year when I had taken her sociology introductory first year course. I was doing astrophysics at the time, and I hadn't even joined the arts program, didn't even think of myself as an artist, but I did do art on the side, and Professor Kathy had commissioned me in the past to do a few works for her. And she saw the potential in that my art style could be used for something unique. In this case, the assignment was that I would illustrate a set of sociological terms that she would then use in her first year class to better explain the concepts to people.
Research shows us that incorporating visual images into our teaching is powerful. Scholars contend that students experience deeper learning when we combine text and images, as long as the images aren't purely decorative. They can be representational, straightforward illustrations, or they can be interpretive, requiring some level of deeper analysis on the part of the viewer. We also know that it's useful to present material in multiple modalities because it increases understanding for all students. As a starting point for our project, I analyzed a set of previous exams in my course, looking for the concepts that seemed to be most difficult for students to understand. I gave Ujjwal this initial list, filled his arms with sociology reference books, and sent him off to begin creating.
Let's start with agency.
This was also one of the first few terms that I've ever illustrated. And it started off quite confusing, like how do you represent something like free will? I decided to think of the motif of a traveler. And as you can see in this image here, he's standing at crossroads. He's thinking, he's wondering where to go. But the thing about crossroads, they don't stop you from going anywhere. They simply point you in a direction and you can take any path you'd like. As you can see, littered around the image here and there are the results of his many different paths. He can choose to get married, start a family, have an education, travel the world, go into business. He can do all of those things. He can choose to stop, turn back, and go and do another one. That's the nature of crossroads. And that is the way I wanted to represent this concept. Total unbridled freedom. And that is agency. And then you have, on the other end of the spectrum, structure. The idea that society has very harsh limitations on you, that there isn't something as simple as free will, that every action you take or can take is influenced by the way society judges you. And I had to draw something about that using motifs and symbols that were kind of related to agency so that people realized that they were seen together, these two concepts in sociological discourse. And so I used the idea of a hedge maze, the idea of constraints, the idea that one person could start at one end, and no matter how much they might want to go to one certain area of the maze, they might eventually just end up in a totally different place. This woman standing at the foot of the maze, she might want to have a family. She might want to start a business, travel the world. She might only be able to do some of those things or none of them, depending on whether she can find the keys that open the doors right at the end that'll ultimately lead to her dreams. There are rules everywhere, limitations everywhere, and it's a kind of a grim way to look at society. But that's the thing, that's the discussion. You think about these concepts and apply them to your own lives using sociological discourse, and this is the essence of what these images are trying to do.
I was blown away by Ujjal's work. I remember just staring at the first images he brought to show me with my mouth open because they were beyond my wildest expectations.